Hello and welcome to our tutorial. This is a quick tutorial on firing and we'll have another sort of episode of this or another add-on to this where we look at damage and stuff. This is just looking at bullet holes and firing and sound and whatnot. So let me turn on my system audio into my recording. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to press play here on my game. And I'm going to look at the floor and fire, and you can see I've got a bullet hole, and it hopefully you can hear a sound. So I fire a bullet hole here, and then I'm going to fire at my wall, and hopefully I can see we've got a bullet hole, but it's a slightly different sound. So we're just going to have a look at how that works. So these are you can see that they've been added in here. Now I haven't put a script on them to get them to delete, just so I can show you them in the game. So this is these are the bullet holes as they're added in, and you can see there's two parts to each one. There's an empty and an actual plane with an image on it. So let's have a look at them. I'm just going to delete this one for a second. So actually, let's look at how it's all set up. So in the last video I put up, I showed you how to make this guy here. So there's the character. So when I press play, I've got mouse look. So I can look up and look down, look around, and then I can press WASD, and I can move around. We were looking at pickups to get scores. So what I've added in to this highly beautiful game is a cube. So literally I went 3D cube, and that's it there. It's called a gun. So I have just rescaled that here and placed it in front of the main camera, and I've called it gun so we can see it here, and I could probably pull it back a bit. And in front of it is this object here called fire. This is just an empty. So it has nothing else on it. It's got no physics, nothing like that. So it's just an empty in front of my placeholder for the gun. It's just so to give the player some sort of idea of the direction it's pointing in. Now we could draw a line to the center of the screen, but effectively what we're doing is we're raycasting. We're drawing a line directly along this Z-axis here. And so wherever this is pointing, that's where we're going to shoot. So we could set up a reticule here. We could kind of stand in front of the wall and fire and then position the reticule. But we'll worry about that maybe in another tutorial. So this is going to draw a line or raycast along this Z-axis. And then we're going to fire a bullet, or we're going to fire a ray down here and see what we can do with it. So what I've done is I've added a script to this empty. So we'll just have a quick look at this script. And yep, that's it there, gunfire. So there's a couple of things in this script. So first of all, there's two game objects. These are the two bullet holes. I have an audio source, so the object that's playing back the audio, and then I've got two audio files, two audio clips. So let's just look at them in Unity. So I've made two prefabs. I'll come back to them and how you make them. And then I have two MP3 files, two audio files. Now I could probably edit off the start of these so that they actually play straight away, and they'll give me a better result. And then on the actual fire empty itself, you can see I've also got this third object here. I've got an audio source, which is literally add component audio source, and that just enables this object to play back audio. I haven't actually added in an audio clip in here. I just need this object to have the ability to play back audio. Yeah, so we'll very quickly just have a look at the prefabs and how we made them. So to make the bullet hole, I first made an empty. So let's just zero it out. So 0, 0, 0, and we could call this B3 for bullet hole 3. Then I made a plane, and I'm going to zero that out. I'm going to drop this in here so it's on top of this empty, and I'm going to call it, I don't know, bullet hole 3 as well. Now I'm going to scale it down, so say 0.1 and 0.1. So now mine are a little bit smaller than this, but we'll worry about that in a minute. And then I've given it a material. So the material is this bullet hole here. So to make the bullet hole material, first of all I imported this image here. Now this is a Photoshop file, so I've got 2 of them here. So I can turn off the background here, so you can see it's got 2 layers. This layer is just, it doesn't matter what's on this layer, it's just an alpha channel, and this is a bullet hole that I've taken from the internet, and I've saved it as a PSD file, so a Photoshop file, and that retains the alpha channel, the transparency, and in here it's just a default texture, so I haven't done anything to it. Then I've created the material, and I've dragged and dropped the texture into the material, and then I've changed, it's still a standard material, I've just changed the render mode from opaque to cutout. So normally it would look like that when you set it up, and then when you change the render mode to cutout, it will remove the alpha channel. And then I've taken this and I've placed it onto the plane, and then you can see here, there's my plane with the bullet hole on it. Now what you're seeing here, and this is interesting that you can see it straight away, the reason I've put an empty and then a plane on the empty is to get rid of these lines. So you can see these lines going across, and they're just a rendering error. So the ground, which is just a plane, and this plane here are both occupying exactly the same space. So what we need to do is just move this up a tiny bit on Y, so say 0.01. So now it's sitting basically slightly higher than the ground, just at a very, very small amount, and therefore we won't get a rendering error when this is instantiated. So I'm going to delete that. And what I did was, after I'd made it, I just dragged and dropped it into my project window, into this folder here. So you can see if I open the prefab, this is the same thing. It's an empty with a plane. I've turned off the mesh collider on the plane. It doesn't need to have any physics, but I've done nothing else to it. Okay. So if I go back to my Fire script here, what I've done is I've dragged and dropped my 2 game objects, my 2 prefabs, into these 2 bullet hole placements here. I've dragged the Fire empty itself over here, because this is where the audio source is, and then I've dragged and dropped these 2 audio files into these 2 slots here. So let's go back to our script. So these are the 5 variables that we've just looked at. So the 2 bullet holes, the audio source, and the 2 audio MP3 files. And then in update, I've just said if I press the main mouse button, so the left mouse button, Raycast, and now where do I raycast? Well, raycast from the object that this script is on, which is the empty that's in front of the gun. And I'm going to transform .forward, so I'm going to send out the ray forward. And then I have 2 ifs inside this. I say if I hit an object, if the raycast, if the hit is on an object with the tag ground, do something, and if the hit is on something tagged wall, do something else. So and actually I don't need this one, that was just to debug, that was to draw the ray so I could see it when I was setting it up. So I only need these 2 lines here. So let's just save that again. So if I hit the ground, instantiate bullet hole wall, so the first one here, and then so this is the bullet hole I'm adding in. So I'm basically finding the point at which this raycast hits the object with the tag ground. And wherever that point, so wherever the point is, so at this point here, hit that point, add this object, so instantiate this object, and then its rotation is on the normal at the hit point. So if the hit, whatever the surface is that I've hit, the normal pointing away from it, that's where I should, or that's the direction that the instantiated object should be placed in. So it should be facing outwards. And that means we can see it. We're not looking at the back of the bullet hole, or it's not sideways onto us. And I've basically done the same thing down here. I've said, so if I hit an object called wall with the tag wall. At the hit point where I intersect the wall, place the bullet hole floor, and it's the same idea at the same kind of the rotation, the normal where I hit. And then finally, I'm just playing back some audio. So I'm using this audio source, that's what's going to play back the audio. And I'm playing back an audio clip, and the one I want to play back this time is ping. And when I hit the wall, I want to play back a different one called thud. So that's it. That's how it works. And in effect, what it gives us is the opportunity to have different sorts of sounds and images. So if the floor was made of wood, for example, and the wall was made of concrete, I might have completely different bullet holes. Now you can extrapolate from this if you wanted to make sort of a more kind of gory kind of game. You could have, you know, if I shoot somebody in the leg, have, you know, a little bit of you know, blood or something, or I could have yeah, you could do all sorts of interesting things, like adding all sorts of different types of decals or objects. Also, if you wanted to, I haven't got them in here, but you know, I could go to the asset store and I could go and get some particle effects. So let's see if this will load up. It will. So let's say particles, and we want particles that are free. And do I need to search again? Search again for particles that are free. And what we could import one of these packages, and then we could use this script here to instead of adding in a bullet hole, we could add in like an explosion, or we could add in you know, some dust coming off the floor. We could do all sorts of very interesting things. We could add in bubbles. You could add in a spurt of blood, or all sorts of things. You could have something go on fire, or electricity. All of these wonderful ideas here. So basically, this script that we're using will allow you to add in, to instantiate any sort of object that you want, and it's up to you to, you know, obviously this is just a little white box world, but to kind of look at your own design and figure out what sort of objects you want to add to your world, and what sort of sounds they should make when they're added. Okay, so we'll leave it there for now.